talk. Hey, I'm Sarah from Thermaltake Australia, and back in January 2020, we made this video. It became quite heated in the comments, especially regarding fan placement and whether I actually knew what I was doing. Well, it's been a hot minute, so I decided I would address some of the things in that video while installing one of our brand new Tough Liquid Ultra AIOs. Because, you know, I can multitask like that. If you haven't seen the original AIO install we did last year, you can check it out up here, I think, if you wish. But for now, let's install an AIO part 2. So your first step will always be to take everything out, lay it all out on your table and familiarize yourself with the parts you have at your disposal. Have a good look through the guide and that sort of thing as well, so you can know exactly what you have to do. So then you're going to want to think about what direction you want your AIO to go. So if you're top mounting, it usually makes the most sense to have it with the tubes facing the right, as that area of your case is usually empty. And having it to the left is just going to make it a bit too cramped. You can also mount it on the front as well. Next, you want to decide on your fans. So you want to make sure that the cables, for example, are facing towards the back. And you try and line them up in the most optimal way for cable management. This is going to save you some hassle later on. So the first thing to address here is fan orientation. So in the original AIO video, we opted to go with an intake configuration. So it basically meant we were aiming to pull cool air into the case, and it meant the fans were sitting this way. So with this bottom bit was mounted this way. So many of you had problems with that. As we explained here in this video that I will link, it's a completely valid way of installing an AIO if that's what your hardware configuration calls for. Having your fans placed as intake is a great option as it gives your CPU the coolest, freshest air possible. However, exhaust is also super valid too, especially in this particular configuration today. Good example of intake being better would be if you front mount your AIO, for example, because then you can pull in cold air through the case. The main reason we showcased the intake airflow in the original AIO video was to show that it's an option for some people, because a lot of people don't actually know that you can do that in that direction. Honestly, you don't have to do it that way. Everything really depends on your own configuration. So here, because last time we showed you an intake AIO, we will do the exhaust option this time, and I'm going to screw in these two fans using these long boy screws. Let's go. Screwing it in a diamond pattern. So starting here, moving over, and then going back.
Subscribe, please.
And that is that. The next step is going to be prepping for the water block install. So our Tough Liquid Ultra comes with this cool double-sided backplate. We're going to be installing onto an Intel CPU, so that means the Intel side, with literally the word Intel on it, needs to be facing into the motherboard. If we were doing AMD, which is on the other side, we would then obviously do it that way. I'm also going to install the little stops on the inside too that'll keep it in place, and I'm also going to install this thermal pad just here on this side. They'll just stop it from touching directly the motherboard, which could be a bit of an issue. So let's go do that. This is why it's important to grow your nails long when you are doing PC building. It's a good thing to do. Don't forget to do this step, children. We have to grab these 4 little dudes, which are kind of similar to the long boys we inserted the fans into, but these ones are different because they have these little sort of semi-circular heads. That's because they're going to go in here. So I did take a look earlier and it needs to go in the second one, I'm fairly certain. So we're going to pop these through. And you just sort of fiddle around with it to make sure it sits correctly. And then you grab this little boy, little spacer, and you just slide him on, and that just keeps him nice and secure so you don't have to worry about them falling out. And you do the same thing with all the rest. And it is all nice and secure. So I'm going to install my water block now. Now some people prefer to do the radiator first and then the water block, but I prefer to have the water block on before doing the radiator. It's really down to personal preference. There's no real set way to do it. I'm going to be dabbing on a little X of thermal paste onto the CPU, and then I'm just going to simply slide on the block over the back plate that we just inserted, and I'm going to use these shiny little guys to attach it. And I always do a little shake of the water block afterwards to make sure it's on nice and secure as well. So let's go do that. So next step, you guessed it, is putting in the radiator. So I have my fan cables already undone, but if you haven't yet, do that now, because basically what you're going to want to do is to feed the fan cables through the cable routing holes, and you basically just follow it along with the radiator into its sort of eventual resting place at the top of your case. So I'm then going to use these little screws to screw it in and keep it nice and secure. And then once it is all inserted, sitting securely, we're going to move on to the fun part, which is cables. But let's go installing this AIO. So we did get some comments in the older AIO video expressing some disappointment that we didn't go into the cable side of things. I do actually remember when I installed that Water 3.0, and I personally, as a newbie, found the cables quite confusing. And we also just had a hard time figuring out how to explain it to you all because, well, everyone's AIOs are different and use different controllers, or they're going to be ARGB and they need to hook up to your motherboard. So we didn't want to spend ages explaining how to set that particular AIO up for people who have different AIOs, because we worried it would just be confusing, and we were trying to make it as sort of generic as possible for anyone trying to install an AIO. But this time we will go through it. Just please remember that if you don't have this AIO, you're going to have to probably do something else. Use the manual, check online. You can do it, I believe in you. So starting off, I'm going to plug in the water block. This one needs to go into either a CPU fan header or a system fan header. CPU is probably ideal, but you can also put it in your system fan header too. With the CPU header, the pump speed will fluctuate to match what the CPU heat is at the time. So this can mean though that your pump may be a bit loud at certain times, so you might be hearing it speeding up and slowing down. But having it in a system header will keep your pump at a constant speed. So honestly, both will work and both will keep your CPU cool, which is the main thing, but just make sure to pick the one that suits you the best and is easier to get to. That covers the pump actually pumping the coolant around, but now we're going to look at getting those fans to work. So our Tough Liquid Ultra doesn't use any RGB or anything like that, so all you have to simply do is plug your fans into this little fan splitter that actually comes supplied with the AIO, and then this will just directly plug into your motherboard, as I will show you. So our Tough Liquid Ultra is a really cool AIO because it actually has an LCD screen that can light up and you can put memes and stuff on it. So to actually get that to work, you have to do a separate cable, which is this, which comes with the AIO itself. You simply plug one of these boys into this little slot on the bottom that you'll see, and then you plug this into just the USB header. It's super simple, super easy, and takes 2 seconds, as you can see. So now I'd advise cable managing a bit. I like to usually wrap up the smaller cables in twist ties and tuck them to the side, or lump them in with the other larger cables that are already kind of tied together. My best advice for this would be to try and keep all your cables in straight lines and don't overlap them. But honestly, cable management is one of those things that just comes with practice and experimentation. So really I can't tell you exactly what to do here, but I'm sure you'll do better than Jono. He's right there!
That hurts.
Well, as you can see, the AIO is in, it is cooling, ta-da, it's all happening, it is lit. Like lit, it's a light, you can see that it's light. If you have any questions about anything that I covered today or talked about, feel free to pop them in the comments below. Let's have a bit of a chat. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to our channel if you want to see more awesome content from us, especially during this daily upload August. Check out either of these Thermaltake videos that are floating around me, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.